All right. Last day of the summit. You believe it? Friday. It's the last day, isn't it? I've lost track. Yeah. I've been at 2 conferences, running across the street. I've been using the wrong badge at both conferences. But it's been a great week. And to me, it's one of the most exciting parts of the year. My wife was asking me before I came up here, she's like, you're doing a lot, but are you excited about this? I'm like, yes, because not only do we get to talk about what's going on currently with our products and services, or what the future looks like, you just get to meet everybody and hear what's going on in their lives, like what's going on with you, how are you using our products, what are you struggling with, what do you like? So back this spring, I was talking to our team, and I said, we need to build kind of a presentation that talks about Azure SQL from this perspective, that Azure SQL can work for startups, it can work for people in between, and all the way to the enterprise. And there's technologies and things that we have that allow you to make that move, if you're wanting to make that move, very easily. So that's kind of the goal of what we're going to talk about today. And I've got a star-studded cast of our team here today to do that. And a lot of demos, some really fun demos for you to see. Let's do some logistics. So first of all, do you see this site here, AKDMS, BobWardMS? The deck is there right now. There's a Past Summit 2023 folder. And why is it important if you have the deck up there? Well, number one, everybody wants to see this. As soon as you get out, like, I want to go look at that deck. What did Bob say? What did Sanjay say? What did Davide say? What did Mwasma say? But guess what? We've recorded all the demos, and they're in the deck. So you can go back afterwards, pull the deck down, and you can go into the demos and unmute them and hear us talk through the demos. So you can literally go back and almost replay this later after the summit to kind of get maybe more insight into something we actually talked about. We'll put that site up again at the very end with a resources slide. So I think the right way to start this is to allow Sanjay Mishra, our partner group program manager in charge of all of our SQL product management, to kind of kickstart and give his perspective on why he thinks Azure SQL is great from startup to the enterprise. Sanjay?
Thank you, Bob. Happy Friday morning, friends. I hope you're all having a good summit. Whether you are a 2-person startup renting camping gears in your neighborhood, building software for that, or you are a Fortune 100 company selling thousands of products to millions of customers, Azure SQL is your database. And we'll show you through many demos, many concepts, how Azure SQL can be your product, can be your database, can be the store of all your data to be able to manage that kind of a scale. Now, the thing is that today's startups are tomorrow's enterprises. Many of you may have heard that point, child is the father of the man. It truly is. All the big enterprises today, they started somewhere. And when you are starting somewhere, you have certain scale, certain constraints, certain priorities, certain logistics for you. When you become an enterprise, you have probably the same constraints, same rules, but probably at a different scale. So for example, if you are in a startup, you're probably staying within a budget so that you do not run out of your funding money, your venture capital money, so that you can go further. While you are an enterprise, you want to be able to either reduce cost or do more with the same capital that you already have. As a startup, you want to go fast. Time to market is super important for you. While when you are an enterprise, you probably want that, okay, can I have predictable development cycles? Can I have consistent product life cycle? And we can provide both these ends through Azure SQL database. You want flexibility as a startup. Can I start with whatever I know so that I do not have any friction while starting my startup? On the other hand, as an enterprise, you not only want to take what you know, but you want to be able to create standards for your org because you have probably a portfolio of many applications, many businesses, and you want to extend that. As a startup, you want good performance by default because you do not have time to go to the nitty-gritties of doing performance tuning for every single application that you have because your time to market is super, super important. As an enterprise, you want the same performance, same scalability at all scale. Not only that, you want it to be secure because now the stakes are higher. You all can achieve through that Azure SQL database. Now, as a startup, you may have a dream that I want to become the tomorrow's enterprise. As an enterprise, your dream could be, maybe I will acquire more enterprises, maybe I will acquire more startups. But guess what? I should be able to easily integrate them, easily extend to them, so that I am based on a very standard, very open, very scalable database platform. And that's Azure SQL Database for you. So why Azure SQL Database? You can start free. You will see some announcements in the keynote you have seen, and you will see some more here today. We'll show you examples and some demos, how you can start free with no cost and start building application and then scale as you go. You can develop applications locally. You don't have internet connectivity, no worries. You can actually have a container on your laptop, the same Azure SQL Database that you get on Azure. You can use the same one on your laptop, build it, whether you are on a beach building application or an airplane or writing application from your grandma's attic. If you do not have connectivity, you can still build world-class Azure SQL application. And then when you are connected, you can push them to the cloud. You can build on your choice of OS. SQL is available on Windows, of course, and all popular versions of Linux. You can build on them, and then you can port them to the cloud. You can build with your popular language, whether it is Python, whether it is C#, whether it is .NET, whether it is Java, whether it is JavaScript. You can build application on your language of choice. You can be guaranteed, count on us to give you the scale and the security and the availability that your applications need. That is SQL is known for. And not only that, you can build AI-ready applications. Please note, data is the mother of AI. If there was no data, there won't be any AI. And therefore, if your data is in SQL database, be assured that we'll provide you the tools, the capabilities, and the extensibility that you need to build world-class AI-ready applications. No wonder the whole world is using Azure SQL Database. 250,000 and more customers actively using Azure SQL Database to build and run. Some of them are startups, some of them are mid-size, some of them are Fortune 100, Fortune 5, Fortune 1 companies across the world. Across them, we have a fleet of 14 million plus databases. Some of Microsoft's very, very highly scalable and very, very highly popular services running on Azure SQL Database today. For example, Dynamics, SharePoint, Bing, they all run on Azure SQL Database today. And they all started as some small application somewhere, scaled to the level that you see them today. Across all these databases, 770 trillion queries are run every month. You can imagine the scale of operation, and this is the Azure SQL Database Managed Service I'm talking about. And this is 145 plus petabytes of data. It is growing. By the time we probably created the slide, and today it would have a few more petabytes would have been added. So that's the kind of scale that we are growing. And a single database is 100 plus terabytes, because on Azure SQL Database we actually support to that kind of a size. So you be assured that no matter how big your application, how complex your application, how extensible needs are of your application, you can count on Azure SQL Database to be the database for your applications today and for tomorrow. 60 plus and counting regions. Azure SQL Database is actually a ring zero service in Azure. By ring zero service means as soon as we lay out Azure in a new region, Azure SQL Database is one of the first services it's put in there. So every single Azure region has Azure SQL Database in it. So tomorrow if we build an Azure region in Moon or Mars or somewhere else, very likely that Azure SQL Database will be part of that. So you can be assured that you can have your application globally available to everybody, wherever you know. Now, these are some of the awesome numbers built on some very, very strong capabilities within Azure SQL Database. But Azure SQL Database is not a regular relational database that you may think of. It is actually beyond RDBMS. That's the name of our slide that you saw. These customers are using it in different dimensions. BKW is using it to store a graph of all the energy supply process. They can know what the shortest path from this substation of electricity supply to my customers. So if a storm happens, they can reroute power to make it available sooner. Udaan is a startup based in India. Like within 2 years of being a startup to become a unicorn. A unicorn is a $1 billion of market valuation for a privately held companies. So that's what is called unicorn. They were one of the fastest unicorn in the entire world. They built their application on day one from ground zero on Azure SQL database, and now able to scale to that kind of scale, that they accelerated scale they have experienced. Perlabis is a very popular gaming system. So you can imagine what kind of gaming application they can run. And talk about enterprise. Every single package being routed by DHL is tracked by Azure SQL database. Every driver who is shipping, every person who deposited something or put something to be shipped, any person who is expected to receive and trying to track it on their phone, all these requests, millions and millions of those requests are all being tracked on Azure SQL database. So you can imagine the kind of varieties of application, the kind of scales of application, the natures of industries being served by Azure SQL database. Because Azure SQL database gives you the grounding, starting from free to all the scale that you need on day one. We have recently announced the free offer. You can get a free SQL database. If you have an Azure subscription, you get a free Azure SQL database. Get familiar with it, do a POC with it, learn new technologies with it, and be ready to build your startup or scale your enterprise, whichever way you want. And to take us through, I invite back Bob Ward to give us education on Beyond RDBMS.
Thanks, Sanjay. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sanjay, Davide, I announced that free offer like at a keynote on a virtual summit, and then Davide posted it as well on social media. Davide blew up the internet that day with the free offer. People couldn't believe that. Remember, that's the lifetime of your subscription, not a trial, by the way. That's the lifetime of your subscription to get that offer. So back in the spring, I'm at a restaurant with my wife having dinner. It's a true story. I didn't keep this. I wish I'd have done it. But anyways, I'm having dinner with my wife, and I don't know if you've done this before, do work at dinner, your wife's going to get super mad at you. So I literally had this brainstorm because I was going to do this kind of type presentation at a conference in July, and I said, I've got this new moniker for Azure SQL, Beyond RDBMS. So I put it on a napkin at dinner. I started sketching down. She goes, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm running on this idea for this talk I'm going to do, Beyond RDBMS. And she's like, you cannot do this in the middle of dinner. I said, no, if I don't do this now, I'm going to forget about this thing, right? So I sketched out what I'm about to show you. Because my thinking was, if we're going to present Azure SQL in a way that we haven't presented SQL Server before, it's the fact that we were talking in the team that people don't realize that even in SQL Server 2, in the engine, is all this stuff. Stuff you would not normally think of. JSON types, spatial types, graph database, column store indexes, memory optimized tables, a blockchain with ledger, and a crazy great query processor. Because sometimes people have the perception I have to buy extra stuff to get that. But that just comes with SQL. So these developers we wanted to go talk to, we said, look at all this stuff you can do now with the SQL engine with your app, and put more into the engine than doing it in your app. And I thought, it just doesn't stop there. What about the ability to do REST API integration in the engine? Write stored procedures that go talk to REST APIs like OpenAI. Or the ability now to go connect to your database and write queries in a way with GraphQL. Or even stuff with Azure Functions to integrate triggers. And then hyperscale, and then this list just goes on and on. So the moniker is, we believe that it's beyond the normal relational database engine, but we think the power of it comes from our engine still. And we're going to talk about both of those today. So the way we're going to organize the rest of this talk is this. We have 3 different experiences for developers, we believe. One is a local development experience. One is during the application development itself, integrating things like AI technologies. And then talking about the platform that backs it up to make sure you know that you can do all the stuff Sanjay just said we've been promising startups to the enterprise. So let's start with the developer experiences. So he mentioned about this local development experience. We want to make sure we believe that there's a local offline experience, something called the Azure Database Emulator, using containers, that allow you to go build apps offline and then move them to the cloud in Azure SQL. And we want a very DevOps experience as part of that. So we've got something called SDK-style database projects, integrated into VS Code. We have the emulator itself, and the projects allow you to easily deploy the containers within an integrated way. You don't have to go deploy the container. You say, I want to do a project, and I want it to be an Azure SQL database project. And we'll go deploy the container on your laptop in those different platforms. But then look at the life cycle here. I want to be able to do a DevOps life cycle with the cloud, and even things like a GitHub repo, or even GitHub code spaces. Our colleague, Brian Spindolini, has a workshop he's built where the entire workshop is you doing this in a GitHub code space for free. So we believe from a development experience, we have that tight integration to give you a whole DevOps experience local to the cloud. And as part of GitHub Actions, which is part of, again, that DevOps experience, we built a new tool called Go SQL Command. So Go SQL Command is interesting. Maybe use SQL Command for like your entire career. So we kind of refactored it. It's actually still called SQL Command, but it's based on the Go language. And it's open source. And then it runs across all these platforms. So you're like, well, what's interesting about it? Because I'm just still using it to run queries. Wait, Davide, I'm in the middle of a presentation here.
Yeah, one second. I prepared a demo. Can I show it?
Davide, I'm in the middle of a talk here.
Yeah,
what are you even doing here?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Okay, all right.
1 minute.
You have
Okay.
1 minute to do this.
Yep, 1 minute. I promise.
1 minute to do a demo.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
demo this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Let me show you.
Unexpected
Okay.
surprise. You have it, okay, great.
Yeah. So
What is this going to do? Okay,
Yeah,
go
let
ahead.
me show you. I'm going to install the
Okay.
SQL Server.
You're not going to install, we haven't installed the server yet, so.
Yeah, oh, that's right. So let's start from scratch. This is a clean machine, right?
Okay.
So
It's a
all
clean
you have
machine.
to do is, as you said, install the SQL command Go. So winget install, easy. Just take a second.
Okay.
It's downloaded, cool. Well, you click on OK, and SQL command is installed.
Okay.
Now, just to make sure that it's installed, I just do a SQL command version, and it's good to go. Now, I have to install SQL Server, right? Which usually takes...
Or a container, or whatever,
while,
you know,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But
Well,
it takes a while to do that.
Maybe not, because I can just do SQL command, create MS SQL, accept the ULA, specify the name of this installation I'm doing, the port in which SQL Server will be listening to, and even create a database with the name. Here I'm using VS Live just in memory of the old conference we did. And then here we go, downloading the container image, installing, recycling the password for SA, so it's not blank, it's not
Okay.
the usual password, and creating the user for me, and it's done. SQL Server is installed.
So,
Nice.
wait a minute, in SQL Command now, the new one.
Yeah.
And then what are you doing now?
Yeah, oh, and now I'm opening Azure Data Studio. No worries about connection string and whatever. I'm connected to the instance. I'm running on database I just created in how much? And this is not fast forward, right? It's
This is-
real.
you're doing
I just
it.
recorded before,
Yeah.
so.
You recorded it, but you did it like in a minute.
Yeah, that's it.
So you installed
that's-
SQL Command, you ran a command in SQL Command to
That's right.
install a SQL Server with a
That's right.
database already in it,
Yep,
and then connected to it.
easy peasy.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that was pretty good. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Yeah, okay, that's pretty
Thank
good.
you, man.
Thanks. But that is the power of SQL Command now. And what I love about the team that's working on that is it's open source. So you're going to see what we're doing. It's all written in the Go language. So get used to that. Take a look at Go SQL Command. We think it is the new way to do SQL Command. There's other functionality that's pretty cool, like Entra IDs built into it. It's got a better set of rich coloring to go produce output for you in the command line. But I know when I was talking to Davide about this earlier, he's like, Bob, this is how I do all my database work on my laptop now. Because I just create SQLs and databases through SQL Command, and I'm just in one spot to go do that. So let's talk about the application developer experience. We want the heart of today's session, quite frankly, to be this. Because all of you out there are thinking about Azure SQL Database as a development platform are wondering, can I use this? Are you guys innovating? Is this going to let me build applications that are really going to make things different for me? Because you might be getting pressure to consider other types of platforms that allow you to do things like AI applications. You're like, is SQL ready for prime time? And we're going to show you we think so. And it's kind of a lightning round of this stuff. So first of all, we have received a lot of great feedback for JSON work we did in SQL 16, and we improved it in SQL 2022. But the biggest feedback we got was, it's still a string. There's no native JSON type. We announced this past build in May that we have that now. So go take a look at it. Sign up for a preview. We now have a native JSON type in Azure SQL Database, and we want developers to go test that and give us feedback about it, because we realize JSON is an integrate part of modern applications. So that's one thing. Second, Davide, this is one of the projects he's put his heart and soul into, is that I'm showing you a picture here written by Davide. I remember distinctly Davide sketching this while I was on an airplane one time. I was like, I'm on an airplane on Teams going, Davide, can you sketch me out what this thing does? And he built this thing. So imagine today you write code to connect to SQL servers with all the providers. So there's a lot of plumbing involved. But let's say you're using static web apps. And you don't have to use static web apps. But your goal is to go use a static web app, and including Azure Functions, and you like the web app to connect to the SQL database, and then write queries. Again, a lot of code involved, right? So is there an easier way to do that? Well, it turns out there is. So we have the ability now with something called Data API Builder to go build you out endpoints, REST or GraphQL, for you then to use in the application to go connect and run queries, any type of query against the database. The amount of code that you're going to save doing this is astronomical. So Data API Builder is something you run to go build the APIs and the REST endpoints. You integrate with the app, and all of a sudden now you're up and running. And then think about now that integration started with Azure Functions. So you're building a complete now application from a web perspective with serverless Azure Functions, built in with SQL, and now using GraphQL or REST API endpoints to all your queries and connections into the database. You're not just saving code, you're saving bugs and time and effort. This is groundbreaking. When we announced this, it's in public preview still, developers have gone crazy on this. When I was at a conference presenting this, one developer came up to me and said, we're pretty much stored procedure based. We like to use that technology. Are you saying now I can use this to connect and just run procs? I'm like, yes. And you're saving hundreds of lines of code to go do it. So JSON and new endpoints and way to connect to your database. So you would like to, in your application, though, to access REST endpoints for all this stuff. Storage, OpenAPI, Azure Event Hub, all sorts of things. Maybe you actually want to integrate events and data with Azure Storage or JSON. But wouldn't it be cool if I could interact with my data to do this in the database itself? Because think about it as a developer. You're going to connect to the database, get data back, go fill out the stuff for the REST endpoint, get the data back, and put it back in the database. Well, let's just avoid the round trip. Let's go into the engine and do it inside it. You know, we love to do server-side programming in SQL. So I want to go now in the engine and write a stored procedure that uses system procedures to interact with my data and contact REST endpoints and do an exchange between them. That is called our new external REST endpoint interface, and that's now generally available. So you got JSON types, you got a new way to connect and write queries, you've got server-side program to interact with advanced REST endpoints in the cloud, and then you potentially have the ability, or you want to have developers to write Azure Functions. If you've never seen Azure Functions before, a complete serverless model to write code. But you're running functions, you need to bind with your data, input and output, right? You're calling functions, you're running queries, you got to bind with your variables. Well, we have tight binding now with that. But the other thing we've seen people talk about is changes. So wouldn't it be cool if Azure Functions had trigger capabilities to trigger an event based on a change in the database? So something changes, the function gets triggered in the code. If you had to write all that plumbing, that would take a lot of code for you to build. And that is now generally available as well. So think of this combination. The JSON type, the Data API Builder, the REST integration, Azure Functions. This feels now like a beyond RDBMS. This is like a modern application development platform. So nobody cares about AI these days, right? I was at Ignite these last couple of days, and I literally walked to every session, every booth, and that word shows up everywhere. And in some cases, it's real. In some cases, it's kind of a dream, in my personal opinion. We think we're ready for prime time for this in Azure SQL. So we talked about REST API endpoints. So now, being able to use REST API inside your code to contact OpenAPI for different scenarios is there, and it works, and we're going to show you how it works. But it goes beyond that. We realize, though, that a co-pilot concept is important, both to developers and administrators, and we have that as well. And we know that things like vector searching are a critical part of building an application, and we've got that as well. And in fact, we showed a demonstration also yesterday of the ability at Ignite to do a prompt flow with Azure Machine Learning Studio and connect that to our database to build chat experiences. And as well, we know you want to connect with things like Azure AI Search and SQL together to make some of this possible. And this is not just dream. We have real code we're going to show you to make that all happen. Now, but in terms of AI, and kind of Sanjay kind of alluded to this, you need to make sure you're using a platform, though, that is secure and scalable to make all this possible. Like, you don't want to go out and use databases that you're going to use AI applications that can't scale if you're not securing your data. So we think Azure SQL, as part of our engine, have all the capabilities. Look at the lineup I just said to you. JSON, Data API Builder, REST integration, now OpenAI, Azure Functions. Putting this together is now a powerful combination. So I want to show it in action. So I want to invite Davide Mari and Mawaz Mazi to come up and show you a series. In fact, Davide, I love this thing. Just before the session, this is the demo train. So you guys come up and show us what it looks like.
Thanks, Bob. Okay. Cool.
You go first, Davide?
Yeah, I can start. And so let me start with what I love, Data API Builder, as Bob mentioned. So let's start from scratch. I have a few tables, and I want to make it available to my developers as GraphQL and REST endpoints. So let's get started. And what I'm doing right now is just, again, I have on the left side the prompt, and on the right side Visual Studio, so you can see exactly what happens when I do stuff. I try to install Data API Builder. It's already installed on my machine, but so you have the command. And now you have a CLI tool called DAB that allows you to interact with the configuration file. That is the only thing we need in Data API Builder. So you could also do it manually, but with the CLI, of course, it's easier. So let's say I have this database here where I have a bus stop and public transportation information, and I want to build something as a backend that will help my developers to build a mobile application to help you to guide through public transportation schedules and whatnot. So I have a stop data, I have a stops table, and also a view with the current vehicle position data, so loaded in real time using Azure Function, for examples. And I want also to support the ability to search using geospatial information. So I want to find the bus that is closest to me, for example. So I have created also a storage procedure that accepts latitude and longitude, and internally, as you will see right now, uses the geospatial support that we have in SQL. So it's really a well-rounded database to calculate distance between where I am and where are the buses that are, and the data that is coming in real time. So you have a table, a view, and a storage procedure, and all I need right now is create a scalable backend that will make my application developer be able to call the database using something that is familiar with them, like JSON or just REST and GraphQL calls. And then that's it. I should not worry about scalability of the backend, security, everything. It should be just infrastructure stuff, right? So let me do it. Let's start doing a DAB init that will initialize the only thing that is required by Data API Builder, because we will not touch your database. So your database will be left untouched. We will use it like you would be doing it, but will not make any modification to it. And I just set up the connection string, securely stored in an environment variable, set the development mode to have more logs, and now a DAB config file has been created. This contains information about how Data API Builder should run and which features you want to enable. And there are a section, that's the most important one, entities, and it's empty, because by default, we don't publish anything unless you tell Data API Builder to do so, for obvious security reason, because you don't want to have your database immediately published to the internet without your consent, right? So you manually need to add the stuff, and here I'm adding the stop table, specifying the permissions. And for now, to make it easier, I'm saying anyone, even those who will not be authenticated, so it is a public endpoint, can do anything, right? But you have very fine-grained permission that you can choose who can do what, even with row-level security. And the entities are populated for you. It's JSON. Why it's JSON? Because some companies told us your Data API Builder CLI is great, but we're going to integrate with our own tools. So we want to generate the JSON ourselves. Yeah, please go and do it. We publish the schema, so you are open to do whatever you want. Here I'm also adding a view, and I want to make this view only available as a read endpoint. So I'm saying that anyone can just read it. And I also want to change the name at which the endpoint will be available. I just want to have / position be the place where my view is accessible. Now I want to add the storage procedure. So in the storage procedure, I do exactly the same, specify the name of the object, the type, and the parameters that this object needs to have in order to work properly. Because you remember with REST, you are not, it's not mandatory to specify all the parameters. So we need to specify the one that are needed for the storage procedure to function in case the end user doesn't specify some of those. And again, that's it. The Data API Builder CLI will just update the configuration. It's probably 1 minute or 2, and my configuration is set. I have these 3 things, table, view, and storage procedure that I want to publish. I want to change a little bit how the storage procedure is accessible via GraphQL. If you're familiar with GraphQL, you know there are 2 main options there. One, to query the data, and it's called a query operation, or to change data, and it's called a mutation. Here I just want to say I want only to query the data, so that's why I changed it. And now I just say DAB start. That's it. Data API Builder is now starting, and we also provide an interactive environment, so you can go to /GraphQL and start to play with your data right away. Here's the storage procedure, here's the table. So let's start with the table. Position is the name of the object I exposed. I can specify the filters, and there is full IntelliSense. I can specify what columns are returned, and that's it. That's my, in this case, that's a view running, right? So I have my view perfectly running. I can decide what to get. And actually, it's even better. It's not that I can decide. It's my front-end developer can decide what to get in order to optimize the answers that they will get. Same goes for the storage procedure. I have my storage procedure. I published it. The front-end developer or developer using this procedure can choose what to get and also pass just the parameters they want. That's it. In 1 minute, my storage procedure view and objects have been exposed as a GraphQL and REST endpoint, and you always see the query that we generate behind the scene because we created the API Builder to be exactly the same product you would have created yourself for you. So it's completely transparent, completely adaptable to your needs. We also support OpenAPI. So if you don't like GraphQL or you don't need GraphQL, you just go with REST. You have full REST support, OpenAPI with Swagger documentation. That's it. It's literally minutes instead of when I asked it to a developer, even a senior one, he told me, well, everything you just shown would probably at least took a day for a senior developer. If we speak with other developers, they will say maybe a week, because then we took care of best practices, of everything else, of security. So everything is done for you. You have pagination, sorting, filtering, selection. Everything is done. And everything can work also, again, regularly with a REST endpoint. Here we go. I'm just issuing a post, specifying the parameters, and here we go, I get my data back. So it's really easy to start. It's open source, so you can even contribute. You can just use it for free on premises or in the cloud, because this runs in static web apps, as Bob mentioned, but also in a container. So you want to deploy it in a Kubernetes container or a Azure container apps? Yep, we have documentation to do that. It just takes 1 minute and you're good to go. Now, the other thing I want to show you is one thing that I think everyone always asked us to do. Like, can I access a file in an Azure storage easily from Azure SQL? Can I read or write a file from a blob storage or a file storage or anything else? So far, it has been always kind of complex. Let me show you instead what you can do with the other side of the REST integration. So Data API Builder publish your data with the storage procedure you're going to see right now, SP invoke external REST endpoint. You can call REST endpoint, right? So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm pointing to the REST endpoint that allows me to access a blob file, a file in a blob store. And thanks to SP invoke external REST endpoint, I can read the content of that file. Here we go. That's the metadata. And if you scroll down, that's the content of my file. So with just one line of code, I can finally now access any file, text file, because we want to be absolutely sure that no one used this super powerful feature in the wrong way, that are stored in a blob storage or a file storage, right? So you can read JSON, you can even write JSON if you want, because the only thing that you have to do is change the method from get to put. And you can write into a file storage or a blob storage. So very easy, just takes one line of code. If you notice, the credential are stored as a credential object, so even if you have credential, they are not available in clear text anywhere. And here you go. That's my file with the data I created from SQL and saved it into a blob store. So I can show you the data just to show that this was done at VS Live. And here we go. I created that just in real time. So this opens up a world of possibilities. The other possibilities now you have, now that you can make a REST call, is to call OpenAI. Because let's say that now you have data in your database. You have a description of your product. You have feedback that you got from a product that's been reviewed. And you want to transform it into a vector, into what is called an embedding, right? So what you want to do is, for example, take some text that you want to search and find all the similar text, like what are people complaining about my product? Or in this case, to make it a little bit nicer, what are the Wikipedia articles that are related to the Foundation series written by Isaac Asimov? I need to ask to OpenAI to take the concept of foundation series and turn it into numbers, into a vector, right? Now, the vector that comes back is just a regular JSON data. So with JSON, thanks to the integration we have done with JSON, it's very easy for me to take that vector and using OpenJSON, transform it into the value of each dimension in the vector and store it into a table. Now, calculating something known as the causing distance, it may sound complex, is actually one multiplication. You don't need a special database to do one multiplication, right? Azure SQL is pretty fast at doing multiplication, especially if you have a column store. So I created a column store on my table, and now I'm using the vector I got as an answer from OpenAI and using the multiplication to calculate the causing distance and find all the similar items that are already stored in my database that are related to Isaac Asimov, to the foundation series by Isaac Asimov. And of course, Isaac Asimov is definitely a topic related to the topic I was searching for, but also the 3 laws of robotics, if you are a fan like me of science fiction. There's a big theme in Isaac Asimov books, and so on and so forth. So it's very easy to do causing calculation and vector similarity search in Azure SQL already, thanks to integration with OpenAI, the REST endpoint, and column store. Right? So it's very, very easy. Don't wait to start to use it today because it covers 99% of your use cases, and it's very easy to implement. Now, with that, I know I said a lot of stuff. How all these technologies plays a role in order to create a modern architecture? Well, here you go. You have Data API Builder that is your gateway to allow client application to talk with your database. Your database can trigger a function to calculate other complex stuff maybe and feed it back into the SQL database. SQL database can communicate to OpenAI. And this is the real architecture of a session search feature that we developed for the .NET conference that 100,000 people watched in these days online, and they were searching for a session, searching for the most similar session to the topic they were interested in. And they were using exactly this architecture. This architecture is available on GitHub. You can deploy on your solution and just enjoy it. And instead of searching for session, you can search for products, for customers, for anything that you want to find something similar to. Now, there is one big thing that is missing here, right? AI, but what goes well with AI? Copilot, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you have anything to say about Copilot?
Yes,
It's all yours.
So thanks, Davide. Thanks, Bob and Sanjay. So far we talked about application development and what you can do as a developer, right? So what we also want to introduce and help is the developer productivity. How can we actually enhance the developer productivity with the help of copilots? So I'm going to show you a series of demos. Some of that actually you've seen in the keynote by Bob and Anna. So let's get started. And who is excited about AI? Few folks? That's great. I just want to make sure everybody's still with us. I know it's a long session, so if you have any questions, we will be around to answer that. So starting with the Copilot concept. So as part of Azure Data Studio, we introduced this Copilot, which is an enhancement of the GitHub Copilot. So we actually added SQL information to it. And what it does is I'm going to show you some very quick three aspects of a developer who's building in Azure Data Studio and how can Copilot help. So the first one is that you have a data set and you want to create a table based on the data set. The data sets could be a JSON file. In this case, it's a JSON one. It could be text. It could be any other format. And with that, I'm just actually writing create table. And right there, it shows me the ID, title, name, width, and exactly how I want. So I don't need to even think about the types, data types, all of the things that I need to know. The second quick demo, who loves to know, remembers all the time the syntax to actually find out about what's my compact level, what's my version that I'm running. So as simple as writing that comment, it is showing me right there. Don't need to, I'm getting old, I'm forgetting syntax. So it's right there, easy for me to actually start looking at that and then updating the compact level, right? That's just, I added a comment, it just showed me, and then I run, done. Last but not least, if you want to create index, who likes to create indexes? You do? OK. So again, in order to know the syntax, learn about it, how to do it, it takes some time if you're a new developer especially. So it's right there. I just said create index, gave me the example. I didn't even have to do a single thing and then click, it's done. So that's how they're just very simple examples. As we get more complex, we are actually adding more features to this and then enhancing this. So this is available today. If you use Azure Data Studio, you can actually start using this GitHub Copilot, which is part of the Azure Data Studio as a Copilot. So it just works. So I've been using it a lot since it came out, and it's very effective. So that's the first demo. So in order to improve the kind of productivity of developers, thinking that you don't have to go back to writing and reading and all the docs and like those hundreds of pages to learn more about, you can get productive really fast. Now the second thing is chatting with your own data. So this is the demo where we have very great tight integration with Azure AI Search, known as Azure Cognitive Search. What you can do is you can use SQL data today to actually start doing that. So this is the demo I'm going to start playing. I know I was on the previous screen, but you can actually use your data that is currently stored in SQL database to index on and start doing vector search on that data. So you don't need to go out to call anything like that, right from within that. So this is the chat, the Azure OpenAI service, OpenAI Studio, that was really well kind of announced in the Ignite conference yesterday as well, where you can go in and you can actually index. So if you see on the left-hand side, I have my data source, which is the past session 2023. It's actually a table coming from SQL database. It has 3 columns, session, title, and abstract, and that's about it. And I've indexed it right here. It takes less than 1 minute to do that. After you're done, you can start searching. So this is the playground. You can actually deploy to a web app or anything as well, and you can use these things. So right now I'm searching for what sessions talk about Azure SQL database at this conference. So I've just indexed the data for this conference, and it will start showing me the information. You can think and imagine the things you can build with this kind of search in your website. It's showing me the title and the content, and also shows me references. And it also has citations that you can go and verify if it's correct or not. And then you can thumbs up or thumbs down to give the feedback to make it more, make it better. So in this case, this is the first session. This was a session that happened yesterday. This is another one, performance tuning in Azure SQL database that's happening. And these are all the right sessions for Azure SQL database. Favorite topic for a lot of folks, any sessions that talk about performance optimization. So now I'm asking the same question, similar question, and then it's actually going into the same data set and providing me the data about those titles and what those sessions are talking about, and also speakers. So again, the citation is there. Mastering Query Store is exactly the session that I was looking for, and I can go and find that. So this is really, really powerful, which means that today your data is already stored. You can index that, and then what our friends in Azure AI Search or Azure Cognitive Search have introduced this thing called integrated vectorization, which takes these large data sets and does the chunking for you. It does the vectorization for you. The data is stored in this AI search, and then you can start chatting with the data. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Does that work on Parquet files?
It works on Parquet files. So the AI search actually takes, so that's a very good question. So can it work on Parquet files? So not just Azure SQL database, you can load blob storage. You can also load data from Azure ADLS Gen 2 or other databases as well. So they have the drop down to connect with that, and then you can actually start building this index across those data sets as well. So that's a common use case. So so far we talked about 2 scenarios. One was developer productivity. Second is using your data and chatting with your data. Third, which is more visionary. Yeah.
Just one quick question.
Yes.
With the Azure Data Studio hooked into, say, a 2019,
Yeah. It works. This was a question that was asked in I think a couple of days ago in the theater session as well. It works with the older version of SQL Server as well. It works with the current versions as well, and it works with Azure SQL database. So the question I just wanted to repeat, does it the Azure Data Studio Copilot works with the Azure SQL Server 2016, I believe you said. Okay, so the last demo that I have is the visionary one. So where do we go from here, right? So this is something which is not available today, but this was shown in the keynote, where we are actually going to the next level, which is what we call NL to SQL, so natural language to SQL. So if you want to really give a natural language prompt and really get started to a SQL level, very complex one, not a simple one like create index, this and this, like a complex scenario. So as Anna showed in the keynote demo, so in this case, you will ask Copilot something like generate a code, which is adding a complex query, which has the context of your SQL database, And in this case, we want to find the most recent orders for customers who have sales over $100,000. This is a complex query. It's not as simple as just writing a few selects and where and some joins, right? It has a CTE involved. It has some other info. And within, like, I don't know, a few seconds, I have the query that is working. So this is really, I think, where we are innovating a lot of our current work, where we are actually going to add this to any and future SQL databases options and also bringing to other options in SQL. So what do you think, Bob?
Well, first of all, Anna beat me with that, so I'm not too happy about it. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to see. And also, you and Davide both are working in this space. Maybe just say a few words here to the audience. I also want to make sure we take all your questions, but like, where do you see, this is just a tip, right? We're really spending a lot of time. There's more coming, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work in the team happening in this space with vector search, with the integration with other AI services in Microsoft, as well as bringing these capabilities as co-pilots and assistants to you right where in your favorite tools, wherever you are.
Awesome. Before we go forward, though, you have any questions about, we just did all sorts of demo for you guys. Let me try to see what you guys demoed. Data API Builder. I love the REST integration with Azure Blob. I think that's an under-heralded type feature I think people would like. Then REST API integration with OpenAI and doing vector embedding. And then now, of course, what you showed was chat sessions. I'll go back in a second and show the slide. We have a one-stop shop, a documentation page we built. I'll go back and show that for the audience, where you can see all this stuff. We have code samples for those too out there, right?
Yes,
Is that correct?
we have.
Any questions for you guys about anything we just showed? Yeah. Davide, maybe you could also be mic'd up to answering just in case. Yeah.
You wrote in English and they compiled have different languages like German, Spanish, also like.
Yeah, very good question. So the question is, you wrote in English, does it support other languages? So the GitHub Copilot in ADS right now supports English only, but the AI search is available in, I believe, 70 or 60, like a lot of languages. So the AI search that I showed in the chat session, chat with your data, is available in multi-languages. You can actually deploy it in different languages as well. The accuracy of that kind of varies for those languages, but that's available in multiple languages.
Do you know any future in terms of the Analytical SQL and the GitHub Copilot about other languages as well? Do you know any thoughts about? I don't remember the direction there.
Yeah, there is some roadmap about it. I would have to go back to the team and it's good feedback.
But connect with us.
Yeah.
Just real quick, also, we're taking questions. Right afterwards, you're going to be down in the booth, is that right,
Yeah.
Moazma? If you guys want to have like a one-on-one conversation about these kind of type things, Moazma's coming down to the booth right after our session. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. Yep. Oh, yep. So just one second.
But Davide's going to use like the impromptu mic thing here.
So you demonstrated store procedure which reading external processes. Does it require it to turn on security like a CLR or?
Great question, because that's related to security. So does SPX invoke external REST endpoint require anything special to run? Yes and no. No, it doesn't require .NET or anything. It's just a system storage procedure we wrote in C++, so it's perfectly integrated in the system. You don't need to switch .NET on to use it. But you do have to give the correct permission to people to use it, because by default, it will be not allowed to anyone to be used. You have to grant an external REST endpoint permission, just to make sure that if you don't want people to use it, they will not be able to use it.
But it's like a securable, right, Davide?
It's a securable,
so
that's
you can
right.
use your standard SQL permission sets to
That's
do
right.
like any type of thing. But think about the abstraction level, Davide. I would think, probably you want to make that pretty secure, but then you abstract your procedure itself on top and make that your securable for your developers or your users.
And since security is a big thing here, we also made sure that there is a correct segregation between roles. So for example, those who have the key to access a specific REST endpoint can protect those keys from those who use the storage procedure. So if you have a highly secured, exactly, assign and reference permission,
Awesome. Other questions? Yeah.
Wait.
It's okay.
Yeah, so other people, it's a big room, so other people will not hear them. Yep, thank you.
So the OpenAI cataloging that you demoed, where you would then ask natural language questions, how is that costed, or how does the subscription cost work on that? Does it roll through Fabric at all, or is it separate cost?
Yeah, so the question you asked about the OpenAI, so there are a couple of things we showed about OpenAI. So the work that was part of the external REST endpoint, calling an OpenAI REST endpoint that you are hosting or you have already an API key to it, that cost is based on whatever you're paying for OpenAI service in Microsoft or otherwise, right? The one that we are using internally in this case, where I showed you chat with your data, we have not just OpenAI model. You can bring your own model and also use other models. We have Turbo and a few other models that you can use. So there are 4 options for you to choose. The cost varies depending on the size of your embeddings, like the tokens, and the number of interactions that you do with that. So so first few, I think 100,000 or something is completely free, but beyond that, there's a cost model for that. So I don't know the pricing on top of my head, but I'm happy to look that up at the booth and provide you what does that cost. And your part of second question was Fabric. So the Fabric piece, if you move your data into Fabric, the OpenAI part over there or Copilot stuff, that is all built under the capacity units for Fabric. So if you have everything within Fabric, you will use the capacity units over there. Again, the pricing around that, I have to chat with the Fabric folks to find out what is their plan. Thank you for that question.
Other questions? Quick question for you. Is this stuff, were you expecting this? I mean, is this the kind of stuff you'll go, yeah, it's like, no, I didn't know, beyond RDBMS, yes. So is this the kind of stuff you'll go back and kind of look at to see if it's possible for your organization? Okay, that's kind of what we're hoping for. So, Wazma, Davide, thank you, great job, guys.
Thank you.
Oh wait, we still have another question.
Yeah.
It's okay, we have time.
As far as working with SSMS, does this integrate into SSMS
As far as
well?
like Copilot type stuff?
Yes, I know we saw some of that before at the keynote, but
I've got a suggestion for you. So what was the name of the survey she sent out? It's called SQL Survey, right? AKA.MS SQL Survey, Anna Hoffman, leads our experiences team. She just posted a survey out on LinkedIn, and she's looking for this kind of feedback. So go there and take that survey and put in that kind of feedback. Right now, SSMS does not support the Copilot experience. It's inside Azure Data Studio and Visual Studio Code. But I'm sure we'd love to hear your feedback about should we be doing those kind of things.
okay.
AKA.MS SQL Survey. I encourage all of you guys to go out there and fill that out. It's really going to help us give a feedback on what's going on. Sanjay, you want to make a few comments?
Yeah, just to add to that, the GitHub Copilot in Azure Data Studio is actually an extension. So when you go to Azure Data Studio, you have the ability to install individual extension. And this Copilot is available as an extension. So Azure Data Studio is extensible, as you know. SSMS doesn't have a way for us to plug in this extension. And therefore, this is not available in SSMS today. But as Bob says, please put your input and feedback based on your usage.
Redgate released SQL prompt with the AI built in,
Yeah.
and that's what's in SSMS.
As an extension in SSMS.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised.
But it's not built in native to SSMS, for sure, not today. But tell us.
Yeah, it's a good feedback. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we have a little bit of time. So yeah, right here. Davide?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's more of a personal question. I have a developer who's built a Blazor application, and he's using Azure DB. And I don't really like NoSQL. So my question is, should I get rid of it and move the data into a real Azure SQL database?
Sanjay, you want to take that question? We'll let our leader answer that question.
So do not move around because what you like, what you don't like. Move things around based on your application's need. If your application really needed a NoSQL database, then you are at the right place with Cosmos DB. But if your application needs all these goodies that you saw today and the scale that you're going to see next, then it makes sense for you to explore that. Is Azure SQL database mine? So what we are planning is that you do not leave or leave out Azure SQL database because it did not have JSON data type, right? So we are bringing that to you. So that today's application or in future application, if you have a JSON data type, you don't have to think outside, you don't have to think beyond it. So we are bringing the beyond into SQL database.
All right. Thanks.
Can I ask you a question? So my question for you is, do you know why your developer was using something other than a relational database?
But first because I think first because he wanted to try something else. But
Yeah. No, something I found is that many developer doesn't know all this stuff. That's why we're doing this session.
Yeah.
Because many developer, when I told them, oh, you know that we support graph? Oh, do you? Yeah, we do. Do you know that we have column store? And that, remember, it happened also recently. Yeah. Oh, column store, really? You have it? Yeah, we have it. So there's a lot of stuff that it's, I don't know, we do a good job of putting in the engine, maybe less good job than, maybe too good, yeah. So that's cool.
Thank you again, guys, so much for the time to tell us. Well done. Very good job.
Thank you, Go.
Okay. All right, let's kind of finish off a little bit with our last phase. We talked about the local development experience, right? GitHub, GoSQL command, local containers. You just saw this incredible display of application developer experiences possible for you. But what about the platform? Like, as a developer, can I trust this platform? Let's talk a little bit about it. Does anybody recognize these numbers? Moswell, what do you think? What do those numbers represent? What's the 30 plus?
So there's 30 years for SQL Server and 13 years for Azure SQL.
Yeah, so by the way, 30 plus, we've been celebrating 30 years for SQL here at this event. It actually started before that, not on Windows, in 1989. That's why it's 30 plus. But 13 years of Azure SQL. We were the first service back in the Windows Azure days. It was called Windows Azure, right? It was called SQL Azure. So the very first prime service, besides just doing apps, which wasn't even VMs, was this service. So we were kind of, if you go back and look at my Azure SQL Reveal book and the history of it, I talked about how both teams built these services together specifically to start out. So we've got a huge experience doing this. And if you think about things that you get as part of this service, you have very deep protected network capabilities, things like private link. This should say Microsoft Entra, right? Is it Entra? I can't pronounce that. It's Azure Active Directory. That capability deeply built in to do that. Did you know that you can go create a user in an Azure database without a login, directly with an Entra account, and have things like multi-factor authentication? Built-in encryption TDE on by default. Built-in data masking. People don't even realize about data masking. You're a developer, you want to do masks, do it in the engine instead of your code. It's in Azure SQL Database. And then we announced this capability, it's been now for about a year, a blockchain inside SQL Server, built inside the actual database itself. And if you've not seen Defender, you may have seen some of the basics of Defender. Yesterday, or 2 days ago at night, I showed something that just released called the Data Security Dashboard. Go check this out. You can go in now across your Azure SQL databases. We can find out data that's sensitive to you, like credit card data. And we can tell you what attacks are happening on the credit card data. And in fact, one interesting scenario is called a lateral attack path. They found a scenario where they built with this, where somebody attacked a virtual machine, got in there with administrative credentials, found an ability to get a managed identity, and then connected into the database and got sensitive data. They can detect those patterns. So go take a look at Defender for databases with the new Data Security Dashboard. What about the engine itself? This is an engine for 30 plus years that knows how to scale. There's deep things built in that we don't really talk about much anymore because it's just worked so well for so long. When you go think about all the benchmarks we do, you need to think that Azure SQL Database can do all of that. And if you want to make sure you have a query processor that handles all your query workloads, we have it. This intelligent query processing is not just a thing you turn on with a feature switch, it's just built into the query processor. How would you like your workloads, your queries to adapt, let the engine adapt for you instead of you having to do a lot of tuning? And then he just mentioned Column Store, an unheralded feature that is built into Azure SQL Database itself and available to you in the Azure SQL Database offerings, all built into the engine. So availability we think is super important, and we have it built in. It's built into the service to give you, like if you have a failover cluster today, we got that. You have an availability group today, we have that. You want zone redundancy, we've got that. All built in the service itself. The amount of time it takes for people to go build that infrastructure, even with Azure VMs, is crazy. And that's built into the service itself. This is not a marketing pitch. This is like true stuff that the database service actually gives you. And this 13 years has helped us iterate on that and make that good for you. But you want read scale. You want to be able to offload your read workloads. You can do that as well. You can do that through replicas. You can do it through the business critical service tier. It is versionless. If you want to get out of the patching game, we have that. Did you know there's an arm, you see that top up there, 24/7 support and community? Behind 24/7 support and CSS is an army of the engineering team, proactively looking to see what things are going on in the service, errors and problems, and fixing those proactively for you. You may not even know that's going on. And built-in disaster recovery. How would you like to go build your own backup strategy scheme? We do it for you, even with a long-term retention of up to 10 years. And so other things we look at as well is that since we have a robust service that is potentially looking out for problems and maybe needing to do things like failovers for you automatically, we have in our providers now retry logic assistance for you to make sure your app is fully resilient as well. Now, when you think about scale and protecting your data, we have some things that are unique. I call these differentiators for Azure SQL Database. Maybe you've heard of serverless, the ability to do auto-scaling and even pausing your workload. What if you had a workload that didn't actually run predictably 24/7, 7 days a week? In fact, let's say, for example, the workload doesn't even run between 2 and 7 in the morning. It's possible. Workloads do that. Well, I don't want to pay for the compute during that time. Well, we have that with serverless. You can actually pause this. And Hyperscale, our offering, has that as well. Or pools. You have hundreds of databases you want to use and manage. You can manage that as a pool and pay for it as a pool. Hyperscale also has that as well. So we're trying to make sure the various offerings we give you have these both capabilities because it's going to meet any needs for your app. And we mentioned about the fact that we have Azure Active Directory. One of the things that, or Entra, but one of the things that's missed from developers is passwordless. When you want to go build applications like Davide's showing you, go passwordless. Who wants to go do that stuff anymore? Managed identities is a very rich way to do that with your applications, and our providers support you doing that. And then finally, we want you to be always on. Here's one differentiator for built-in HA that I tell a customer. You yourself can do HA. I know, you're very good at it. People are very good at building these scenarios. You can even do it in Azure VM. How would you like an SLA behind it? So, did you know that Azure VM has its own SLA, but not a SQL SLA? So how would you like the SQL team to give you an SLA behind the availability of what you're actually paying us for? And we have that. I mentioned that we can be zone redundant within data centers, but we also can be geo-redundant across regions. And we just announced here this week at this conference the ability to have a standby replica in a geo fashion and it be SQL license free, as long as it's DR. That's a great way for you to save costs. Now, when we talk about hyperscale, one thing that maybe you missed or didn't see is a new pricing model. Maybe you saw in the keynote. Connor did this magic. We had like a $2,400 a month cost. And he put his fingers on it and went to $1,600. We want to make hyperscale a cost-effective solution for you. But here's the misnomer. Everybody thinks hyperscale is about scale, 100 terabytes. But I want you to consider this. You can start with hyperscale, actually. Let's say you start free with our free model. But then you want to start actually using a paid model to your database. You can actually start with hyperscale because the architecture is built for auto scale out and up. So start your database even at hyperscale with this new pricing model. And then maybe you extend it. You're like, hey, I'd like to go to more cores and more storage and even put availability on that, like with redundancy. Well, you can. And here's the cool thing. Now that hyperscale is serverless, you can just tell us a range of cores you want. You don't even tell us how much storage you need. We just start using storage for you per your needs. So now you started here, you started scaling up, and now you can go truly hyper. You can go all the way to a large number of cores, all the way to a huge amount of storage, like 100 terabytes, and up to 30 named replicas to really scale out the workload. So we're kind of really trying to give a message to customers that hyperscale is not just for the largest workloads, it's for any workload. But it's got this great story in a very seamless online way for you to scale per your application needs. And again, check out the new pricing model. So pools is something that people have been using for a while with our general purpose service tiers, but hyperscale now provides that. And if you've got this need where you have a lot of different databases out there that you've got to use as a developer, and you want to pool together the actual cost for those because the workloads are unpredictable, this is a great choice for you. And we haven't had it for hyperscale, but now we've got that available for you. You can see now with my announcements about serverless and elastic pools that we think hyperscale can be that way to start and grow as your needs. Something that didn't make the press because we couldn't really talk about it as much until it actually got announced is something called Fleet Manager, Project Renzo, we call it. You can sign up today for our preview. You can see these links up at the top. Consider this. There's maybe a company at Microsoft or part of it called Dynamics. Maybe you've heard of those guys. They actually manage up to like 1 million databases to support Dynamic customers. Those folks worked with us together to build a project to help them manage and provision millions of databases. And we're like, you know what? We should put that as a product. So today, this week, we announced a private preview for something called Fleet Management, where if you want to go out there and provision manage millions of databases, and it can be either databases or pools. This is not an elastic pool concept. This is managing the pools or managing millions of databases. And you have these concepts you can do called tiering. Think of these like templates. I'm like, hey, I want these databases to be this kind of cost, this kind of performance, this kind of storage, this kind of security. Here's a kind of a different tier over here that I can do as well. So check this out. It even offers things like dynamic load balancing. We think this will change the game for enterprises, especially that need to manage a large number of Azure databases, need a simplified way to do that. So go sign up for the preview. Look for a lot more from our team in this coming up soon. So what I'd like to do is have a little demonstration here before we end with Mwazma talking about hyperscale. Mwazma.
Thank you, Bob. So we're going to talk about two capabilities that Bob already showed or mentioned. One is the hyperscale serverless, and the second one is Elastic Pool hyperscale with the capability of being serverless. So the first one here is the hyperscale serverless. So what you can do with the arrival of hyperscale serverless autoscale, you're now able to configure hyperscale compute, either provision or serverless. So you have both options. Serverless resources are autoscale and built on a per second basis, both from a vCore and memory perspective. In order to configure the hyperscale database autoscale, you have to specify the min vCore and max vCore in this case, which you can choose. Here there's the two as the min vCore and the max vCore are set as 16, or you can go up as you want. When the database is not in use, you are charged for the min vCores. If not, it's based on the resource usage triggered by the application demand. So it's completely, purely serverless. So just to show you from a metrics perspective, you can see if you run a workload in the last 5 minutes, as your workload starts, your CPU and memory goes up, and so does the pricing also starts for that. And then you can see here that you have about 22K batch requests per second happening. So we are actually ramping up CPU and memory almost instant, I can never say that word, almost quickly. So going from this, so you can see that this has started, and then we are actually ramping up the resources accordingly as well as your workload is starting. So it keeps up with the demand of your workload. So now what happens that you have an unpredictable workload, a workload that goes up and goes down, right? So you have a sale going on or something like that. So let's see the same thing over a window of, let's say, 6 hours or 7 hours, and see if you don't have that kind of workload, don't have that kind of load coming to your app, what will happen. In that case, you'll see that as your workload goes around, this is around 5 hours window of that, you can see the CPU actually goes up and goes down. Same thing happens to memory. We are a bit conservative in terms of memory, because what if there's like a small pause and you want to come back right away, right? And we want to keep that kind of cache going for you. So we basically ramp up the CPU and memory, and then we slow down the same thing instantly as well. Memory, we're a little bit conservative. So this is kind of the model that we have for hyperscale serverless. Again, using the serverless model, you can specify the min and max vCore. The most important thing, it saves you a lot of cost, especially if you have that kind of workload. We will not be, the last chart here is really important, is the billing one, so you won't get charged when you don't have a workload running. So that's the power of serverless hyperscale. That's the first capability that Bob talked about. The second one, and this is going to be even faster demo, and I have to talk really fast over that, so wish me luck. That is for the Elastic Pool. So Elastic Pool as a serverless, Elastic Pool as a hyperscale model. So what does that mean? So we introduced Elastic Pools, right? So let's say you are a SaaS company, and you are a ticket selling company that has many customers of your own, and each customer is selling tickets, for example, ski tickets, concerts, and more. With the Azure SQL Hyperscale Elastic Pools, you can create multiple databases with a shared common set of resources like compute, memory, worker nodes, and so on. On the Azure portal, you all have to do is click Create and select the cores, the service tier, in this case 16, and the Elastic Pool, hit Create, and it's get created for you. In just over a minute, the Elastic Pool is ready to use. You can go and set the policy at the pool level to ensure equitable resource distribution between these databases. And also, you can make sure that in the Azure portal to create the first database experience there is Hyperscale Elastic Pool tier. Later, your application will create databases per tenant on a programmatic basis. So for example, you have a new sales company that is coming up, you can actually onboard them in the same model as well. For the upcoming sales season, let's say you are conveniently monitoring the resource utilization of the Elastic Pool and the individual databases in the pool. With all these sales happening, you notice that the pool is running close to capacity. In this case, you can scale that up easily. So let's say you're running at capacity about 90% of CPU. You can scale that up, and then you can see it comes back to a comfortable level of 60%. So it basically distributes that across. After scaling the Elastic, I'll just walk over the last piece. So after scaling the Elastic Pool area, what you can see is you can see the usage across those databases as well. So for example, one of the databases is being idle. You can move that Elastic Pool into another database as well and completely get rid of it. For example, if it's a ski season and you don't want to use that particular database anymore, you can completely move all those resources to another database within the same pool. So that's how we are envisioning the Elastic Pool. Again, it's based on hyperscale model. You don't have to pay for the things that you're not using. And at the same time, you can share resources and can manage that for a large-scale company, which is a SaaS company. So with that, I would like Sanjay to close us out.
Thank you, Mazma. I can't resist but take some examples of customers. You may ask, okay, you showed us a lot of technologies. Who's using this? And I'll take a few examples. This morning, when I was about to drive to here, I saw an email from a customer that we build software as a service for the restaurants. And we don't need the database when the restaurants are closed, like past midnight till the morning. So we wanted to scale it down to a level so that we are not paying when we are not using. And this morning is as fresh as that. And obviously the answer is serverless. You go with serverless, and then you don't pay when you're not using. You just auto scale down, auto pause. So that gets an advantage. Two other examples which I was thinking while seeing all this stuff. 2020 springtime, when COVID started, every government, every developed country started to actually track who is being impacted by COVID, because they didn't know how big this will be. They didn't know how many people in which different ways are going to start accessing these databases and queries. They knew maybe the medical facilities is going to need access to the databases, the research facilities, the vaccine innovators need to do this. People don't know whether it's a fad that's going away by 100 people, 200 people, or millions of people going to be impacted. Invariably, each of these big countries of the world, they choose hyperscale database. Our own here in the USA, in the UK, in India, in Germany, in South Africa, those are that I know of. This is not a coincidence that they use hyperscale, because they know that if it is small, that's great, but if it becomes big, we don't have to rip apart everything and then go to scale. So that's the power of hyperscale, give you from small to big and anywhere in between. Third example I have to give about the blockchain. 4 years back, I was talking to a startup company in Hong Kong. There are two people startup company, the CTO and a developer. And they were building a money transfer application among 8 banks, one of the world's biggest banks in Hong Kong. And they were building a blockchain application for this money transfer using a language called Corda. People who work on blockchain, they say pretty popular language that Corda is a language. Corda has its own data storage. It's called H2. I didn't know that stuff till I talked to them. And they said, hey, we are doing this. We built this application. We showed it to the banks. The banks sent us back. They said, we don't trust what you are talking about to store our banking transaction data. We love your blockchain, money transfer stuff, and all this stuff. We trust SQL Server. If you're going to put this in the cloud, go put it in Azure SQL database, because that's where we can trust that our money transfer transaction, customers' account information can be secured and can be communicated. So they came back, they ripped apart the bottom layer of their app, replaced that. They kept the Corda part, the app part, and they ripped apart the data storage part, replaced that with Azure SQL database, and then they start building on. They were one of the earliest customers of our Ledger. Even when long before preview, they started to experiment with us. So you can imagine customers of various industries and scale and size and different stage of the life cycle, how they are using Azure SQL database. And this kind of diagram shows you that Azure SQL gives you an absolutely maximized integrated environment. Whether you are trying to build APIs, whether you are trying to build an analytics system, whether you are trying to build AI applications, easy and seamless integration with Azure SQL database with all these components that you see. Many of these components, you see them as a diagram. You're using this in some of them. By the way, you cannot try, if you have a pen and paper, try to write app. Invariably, you will end up writing API and then make it app. Imagine A, P, P, by the time you say it's API. So apps need APIs. You are building APIs in your apps. That's why we built Data API Builder, so that you can seamlessly convert your data into an API with 3 clicks or three commands. So APIs are integrated part of app. And take the P out from them, it becomes AI, right? So this is not just a literal thing that I'm talking about. This is how our thinking is that every app, every database is API and AI enabled. And that's why we're building these integrated systems for you. Now, given all this, the future is super bright for Azure SQL. So if you're betting your app, if you're betting your business or betting your career on Azure SQL database, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. It has got deep integration with Microsoft Fabric. You'll start seeing a lot of announcements, developments in this area. We showcased some in this event yesterday. The AI extensions, integration with AI search and everything gives you a fundamental shift in how you can think about application development. Cost effective, you saw so many examples of that. It can scale and tunes automatically. The genius of Azure SQL database is not because it has got an intelligent query processor. It's not because it has got graph capability or data API builder. The genius of Azure SQL database is that you don't have a genius to use it. But if you're a genius, you can create magic with it. These are the resources that we want you to see. As Bob mentioned, the slides and the demos are at the top right corner. And then you can, if you're a startup, please stay engaged with Microsoft Startup. Then there is a how to get Azure SQL, how to download the Data API Builder, and all our samples for Azure SQL AI samples as well. You can download them. And on the bottom, you can see various blogs, documentation, and all other content that we have produced for you. Many of them are either sample applications or a video or the actual content that you can actually leverage today to either extend your knowledge or extend your application and so on. All the best. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. We'll be around here afterwards. You guys want to ask some questions again,